You are listening to The Writer's Block. I am horror author James Hershey Jr. It's time for a truth bomb. Welcome to another episode of The Writer's Block. Horror author James Hershey Jr. And I am joined tonight by my buddy and the founder of Revolution Cast Network, Eric Wickham. Say hello, Eric.
Hello, Eric. Oh, you meant
I knew you were going to do that, partner. I knew I was just waiting for it.
Hey, you know.
Tonight is going to be a very, very cool episode, at least for me, because tonight's topic is one of my all-time favorites, and anybody that knows me knows that I'm a huge, huge fan of Bigfoot, and that's what the topic tonight's going to be. Bigfoot. Whether you call him Bigfoot, Yeti, Sasquatch, the big guy, hairy boy, whatever the hell you want to call him, skunk ape, swamp ape, there's all kinds of different names for him. But to me, he's Bigfoot or Sasquatch, and he just rocks, man. I love Bigfoot, and he's become a lot more popular lately. I mean, you have like movies like Harry and the Hendersons is a classic. Everybody loves that movie. The Jack Link's jerky commercials have Bigfoot in them, and there's just all kinds of Bigfoot in popular culture now, and I think that's really cool. And I'm not really on this topic, as you can tell, because like I said, I am a big fan of Bigfoot. So instead of the normal show where I will lay out both sides and we'll try to figure it out together, what I thought we would do tonight is talk about Bigfoot and lay out some of the evidence like we normally do. And I guess you can really make up your own mind still, but just I believe Bigfoot exists, so I'll get that on the table right away. So there's no misconceptions of me being unbiased here. Many, many, many cultures all over the world have legends of Bigfoot. To us, he's Bigfoot. To the Native Americans, that's where the term Sasquatch comes from. The Chinese have their own version. The Russians have their own version. In the Himalayas, he's known as the Abominable Snowman or Yeti. And so there's all over the world, each culture has their own version of Bigfoot, basically. And it's always my feeling and my thought that if there's a legend that takes place in multiple cultures all around the world at multiple times and even at the same time, then that tells me that there's a very good chance that whatever that legend is about existed. Now, whether it existed in the way the legends tell it, or whether there was just an actual creature or an animal that existed that the legends are based on, like with dragons, for example. So many different cultures all over the world have legends of dragons. It's weaved throughout all your medieval stories. The Chinese, it's a big part of their whole culture. I mean, there's a lot of different places that do dragons. So I think that there's a pretty good chance that dragons did actually exist. Now, were they giant flying reptiles that breathed fire and acid and ate people? Probably not. But most likely, I think it was probably some kind of holdover from prehistoric times that a small amount existed and survived over time. And that's what the actual legends of dragons are based on. I think they probably got killed off in the Middle Ages. You know what I mean? When you hear all those tales about knights and stuff killing dragons, I think that's probably what ended up happening to them, really. But that's a whole other show. Tonight, we're talking about Bigfoot. And so I want to go over some of the evidence for Bigfoot. And I'll try to tell you what the skeptics say. You know, like how they try to debunk it. And I'll just give you the facts on it, you know, the science on it. And I'll let you make up your own mind. We'll start with the granddaddy of them all, the big one, okay? Oh hell, I done forgot the name. Patterson-Gimlin film, okay? That's the one that pretty much any article you see on Bigfoot any documentary about Bigfoot, any book about Bigfoot, they're all going to have that picture, that iconic picture of a female Bigfoot walking away and looking back over her shoulder at the camera. That's from the Patterson-Gimlin film. That film was taken on an old 8mm camera, video camera, a long time ago. I forget the exact date, but it was a long time ago, okay? And what the story behind that was they say they were out on their horses, and they come onto this clearing, and there the thing is. So they jump off the horse, and they run up, and they try to get this thing on camera. They try to capture the Bigfoot on film. And that's why in the beginning of the Patterson-Gimlin film, it's real shaky. You can tell they're running. And then they get there, and they catch it as it's walking away from them. And then he tries to run again to catch up to it, to film more, and he just can't. He can't get it. He just gets it kind of disappearing off in the distance. This is the film that people who believe in Bigfoot always point to. And they say, look, the Patterson-Gimlin film, right there you have a Bigfoot walking, talking, I mean, not talking, but walking, looking around, doing things. It's an actual Bigfoot, okay? And then skeptics say, oh, that's a man in a monkey suit. Okay, now I'm going to debunk the whole idea of that being a man in a monkey suit. Okay, let's skip over the fact that the technology did not exist at that time to make a costume that's that realistic, okay? This was before even Planet of the Apes came out, okay? This was long before Planet of the Apes. So, you didn't even have that kind of technology, okay, at the time. And if you remember Planet of the Apes, the original Planet of the Apes movie, those were not very realistic costumes at all. I mean, they didn't move. I mean, it was just, you could obviously tell it was a fake costume, okay? It didn't look real at all. Excuse me. The thing that's so amazing about the Patterson-Gimlin film is if you pay attention when you watch it, and you guys probably haven't noticed this because you haven't really tried to break down this video like I have, but go to YouTube and look it up, find the footage, and watch it again. And when you watch it, this time, instead of taking in the whole scene of the Bigfoot walking, I want you to concentrate on a couple areas of the body as it's walking away. Okay, you might have to watch it a couple times to see it all. But I want you to concentrate on the back, and especially the muscles in the back. Okay, and as it's getting further away, the muscles in the calf and the upper leg as it's walking. Okay? You can actually see the muscles flexing, like contracting and expanding as it's moving. Okay? That technology does not exist to be able to make a suit that will do that, even today. Okay? Even with all the special effects we have today in movies and stuff, if you wanted to do something like that, to make an animal that's muscles actually ripple and move as it walks that way and make it anatomically correct with the movements, you would have to do CGI. I mean, to this day, I don't even think you could do that. And if you could, it would be super, super expensive. Okay, but I just don't think it can be done today. It definitely could not be done at that time when that footage was shot. I mean, because this was back like 50s or before. And that right there tells you right off the bat, this is not a suit. Okay, this is not a man in a monkey suit. This is something that's alive. This is a creature, an animal. The second thing I want you to notice as it's walking away is there's a point where it raises its foot. Okay? Now, you can see a bit of the bottom of the foot when it lifts its foot up. And one thing that you'll notice on that footage, it's hard to see, but you can see it, is you will see ridges, okay, on the bottom of that foot right before it lowers it back down. It's only for a split second of the film, but you can see the outline of ridges. Now, what those are called are dermal ridges, okay? Your fingerprints on your hand, right on your fingertips, are dermal ridges. You have the same thing on your feet, okay? And one thing about the overwhelming majority of the plaster of Paris cast of the footprints that people make when they go out and they find the footprints and they pour the plaster of Paris in and they make the casting, one thing about those that's unique is the dermal ridges. You can actually see on those castings the dermal ridges on the feet. Okay? And they have been tested and studied by people that are experts in primate physiology and dermal ridges in primates, and they match up with primate dermal ridges. So what that tells you is you're looking at either a human, an ape, or some kind of variation in that same class of primate. Now, that's important because that's another thing people fake all the time, or they say is faked all the time, are the big footprints. Okay? If you have footprints that have unique dermal ridges and they don't match up, that's another important thing to note, is if you have two different sets of casting, they're going to have two separate sets of dermal ridges. Because just like no two fingerprints are alike, no two toe prints are alike either. And that holds true not only in us, but also in other primates, is you don't have identical dermal ridges. So if you look at the castings, you're going to have different sets of dermal ridges on the toes, depending on what casting you're looking at. That also rings true to me, okay? So you have the musculature all throughout the body that's moving as they're walking away. The second thing to look at is the knees and the way the creature walks. When a Sasquatch walks, it doesn't walk the same way a human walks. With humans, our knees bend. It's pretty much back and forth. You know what I mean? And we bend our knee, we lift, we put it down, and we repeat over and over and over again. With Sasquatch, there is a little bit of an outward bowing to the knee. So when it lifts, it rotates to the side a little bit and then goes down. Okay? That's different than a human being walks. That's a completely different way of walking than we have. Okay? That's present there. You also have a difference between the length of the arms as opposed to where the waist and the knee is. Okay, on a human being, your arms don't reach down to your knees. They go past your waist and they rest somewhere in between. On this film, the arms are a lot longer in proportion to the body than a human's arms are in proportion to their bodies. So there's a lot of different physical things on this video which will let you know that you are looking at something that's not a man, okay? And I honestly don't believe that most of those things could be faked. And even if they could be faked, which I don't think they can, how are two old cowboys, because that's who these guys were, gonna know all the scientific facts about dermal ridges on the foot and primate and the locomotion of a primate as opposed to a human as far as the knee joints go? How are they going to know all those things in order to fake them? You know what I mean? I think the Patterson-Gilman film is the very best piece of evidence that we have to show us that these things actually exist. And you always hear these skeptics and these critics who scoff at the whole idea of the film. And they're like, oh yeah, it's so fake. You know, they even admitted it was fake on their deathbed or some such nonsense like that. If you look at the film, you can see these things, okay? Those things cannot be faked. So I don't care what somebody said on their deathbed. It wasn't the person that shot the film. It was a guy who supposedly was the guy in the monkey suit, is what they're saying. But I don't even think that's true because this thing is humongous. I mean, if you look at it, it looks at least 9 feet tall. Okay, it's hard to judge because you don't have a human standing right next to it. But just looking at it, it's obviously much wider, much taller than a normal person would be. Okay, so in order for somebody to fake it, they would have to grow several feet and gain a couple 100 pounds and just be huge. You know what I mean? I just don't see it.
No, that film was made in 1967, by the way. I just saw the...
There you go, 1967.
I just looked it up for you.
Yeah, so that kind of detail and special effects didn't exist then.
Well, they didn't even have fingerprints back then. There was no such thing as fingerprinting. So for them to say they faked that back in the day when they didn't even know anything about fingerprints is ridiculous too.
Yep, there you go. Perfect example. Perfect example. Now, there's been a lot of different pictures and a lot of different films over the years that people have pointed to as evidence that Bigfoot exists. Some of these were obvious fakes, and some of them were very compelling. You know, that's kind of the problem, is whenever you have a mystery like this, you're going to have idiots out there who are trying to fake it just to kind of make a name for themselves or to make a little bit of money or whatever. There's one piece of footage that shows a Sasquatch running across a hilltop, okay? And it covers this amazing distance, which is several hundred yards, in literally a couple seconds. I mean, it's trucking, man. And it covers this. It's amazing how fast this thing moves. And then disappears. Not into thin air. He runs into the brush. But they actually went to that location where it was filmed. Okay, they did this, I believe it was for Discovery Channel. And they got a world-class sprinter. Okay, somebody who was a runner in the collegiate levels and Olympic levels. He is a world-class sprinter. And they tried to get that person to recreate the run that Sasquatch took and to beat the time, okay? If this was a man in a monkey suit that made this run on this film and not a Sasquatch, then it stands to reason that a world-class sprinter who is not in a monkey suit, who is dressed in the normal sprinting stuff he would wear to sprint, could easily beat the time of some normal average dude who is encumbered with a monkey suit. That makes sense, right? So they lined the guy up, and he did 4 or 5 different attempts trying to beat the time that this thing crossed this distance in. And he couldn't even come close. The terrain was very rocky and uneven and hilly, and it was just slippery. It was a dangerous terrain to try to run on. And this thing made it across this terrain, no problem. Didn't slip, didn't stumble, just hauled ass. The sprinter at first couldn't get across the terrain without slipping and stumbling. Finally, he was able to make it all the way across without slipping or falling. And he did it 2 or 3 times once he could get across without falling. And he didn't even come close to the time that this thing covered a distance in. So, to me, that's another bit of compelling evidence that tells me that this was an actual creature out there. Because if a world-class sprinter can't cover that distance, then definitely some average Joe in a monkey suit's not going to cover that distance quicker. You see what I'm saying? So that's another really great piece of evidence. But for every great piece of evidence like that you're going to have the crazy people too. I mean, there was a lady, I believe it was in Georgia, who lives up in the mountains there, and she swears that a whole family of Bigfoot visit her all the time. And they hang out and they have dinners together, and one of the Bigfoot has actually come in her home, and she has had sexual relations with the Bigfoot. I mean, this is real. This woman actually believes this. Now, is she just lying to try to become famous? Or does she actually believe that she has had sex with Bigfoot and that the whole family of Bigfoot come to her house and have dinner with her and stuff? I don't know.
I think she's just full of batshit crazy, personally.
Yeah, to normal people, you would look at something like that and say, yeah, that chick's kind of crazy. You know what I mean? But maybe she's just lying. Or maybe, and this is definitely a remote possibility. I mean, anything's possible in this world. But I'll give you this, that the odds of it actually being true are very, very slim. But maybe there is a family of Bigfoot that live in that area that she's earned their trust, through giving them food or whatever, and maybe they've come in closer, realized she's not a threat. Who knows? I'm not going to sit here on the radio and say that this woman is full of shit. Even though my gut tells me she's probably full of shit. But who knows? So I'm willing to suspend disbelief a little bit there and say who knows. But you have those kind of stories too. You also have, there was a really good video I saw that actually came from the dash cam of a police cruiser who was cruising at night down this old dirt road, and Sasquatch ran across right in front of the cop car and just ran right across the road. I mean, the video with the part of the video with the Sasquatch, and it only lasted like a second or two, but you can clearly see what it is that runs across the road in front of the cop car. And the cop car immediately stops, and the guy jumps out with his light, and he's trying to find this thing that crossed the road in front of him. And he could never find it. So whatever it was got away and took off.
Well, that piece of footage you're talking about, brother, that was on a show, and one of our listeners had a question about this, and it's Zach show that this was on. Do you think the Finding Bigfoot is actually a good show? And that cop footage you're talking about on that show, Finding Bigfoot, they went to that town, and they actually talked to the cop. And he wasn't the only cop that said they've seen that exact same thing, where they were driving along late at night, and it ran right across the road in front of them. So it's not like these guys are making it up. And I've seen that dash cam footage you're talking about, and you can quite clearly see, sort of like that Patterson-Gimling video, the same thing. I think he said, it took like one step on the road itself, and then it was already across the whole road.
Right, yeah. And as far as Finding Bigfoot goes, they're not very successful. You know what I mean? But then again, none of us are really. You know what I mean? That try to find Bigfoot. It's hard. So they never get the evidence on film. But one thing I will give for them is at least they're out there trying. You know what I mean? They're out there, and they're in the dark, and they're in the woods, and they're busting their ass, and they're trying to find this thing. So I will give them props for that, definitely. Really, in all reality, that's all you can do, is you got to get out there and try to find the thing. And that's the only way you're going to find it. Now, I think they rely way too much on the yells and the knocks and stuff like that on that show.
Yeah.
I don't know how, if that would attract a Bigfoot to you, or if that would just alert them of your presence and they steer clear of you. You know what I mean? I think that might be part of their problem.
Well, I would think they'd be able to tell I think they'd be able to tell the difference in the way we yell and the way they yell. I mean, they try to get the big guys to do it, and I'm sorry, we as people know the difference between someone talking and a machine talking. So it's kind of the same concept for me. I think they can tell the difference between a human yelling and one of their yells, or one of their knocks and one of our knocks, you know?
Yeah, I think that what they're trying to do is to make the Bigfoot curious, so he comes in to see what's going on. You know what I mean? But I don't know. I just think they're making too much damn noise, and to ever attract anything. If you want to attract something, you make your presence known, but you don't become obnoxious about it. You don't make too much noise, because with almost every animal in the woods, and I can tell you because I'm in the woods a lot. I'm an outdoors guy. I live in the mountains. I'm constantly walking around in places where most people don't go, okay? So I can tell you one easy way to make sure you never see a bear when you're walking through the woods is to make a buttload of noise. If you're walking through the woods and you're singing to yourself and you're saying, "Hey, bear, well, yeah," whatever, you're just making a racket and being an asshole, you're never going to see a bear, because they'll hear you and they'll just piss off somewhere else, okay? Unless it's a grizzly. If it's a grizzly, they might hear you and say, "I'm going to go eat that." You know what I mean? Because they eat us sometimes. So, but with most bears, they're going to avoid you. And I think the same thing would be true with a Bigfoot. If you're making a hell of a lot of noise, they're just going to go somewhere else. You know what I mean? There's a reason why this thing is still a cryptic creature instead of a known creature. because it doesn't like to be seen. It goes to great lengths to hide itself from us. So announcing our presence in the woods real loud, to me, is a dumb idea, because it's not going to draw this thing to us. It doesn't want to be with us. That's the whole reason it's hidden. You know what I mean? So I think it'll just leave. Now, one thing on that show that kind of drives me crazy is that chick.
Yeah.
That the Skeptic Chick. She makes me nuts. You know, every single time something happens, she's like, "Yeah, well, that doesn't mean nothing." You know, it's that same skeptic crap that I hear from all kinds of people about all kinds of things. And it just makes me crazy, man. It's like, come on, just believe a little bit. You know what I mean? I mean, this is great. You're out here in God's country, and you're looking for something that nobody knows for sure if it exists. I mean, what an adventure this is. You know what I mean? Help out. But she's a scientist, you know, so she's trying to be, I guess, scientific about the whole deal. But she just annoys me. You know what I mean? It's like, no matter what they find, I think they could actually have a Bigfoot walk up and shake hands with him, and she'd be like, "Oh yeah, that wasn't a Bigfoot. You know, that was swamp gas, like on our last show."
No, that's the one thing I don't like on that show too, is her, because it's good to have the skepticism, but sometimes she just goes way overboard with it, and some of her comments are bordering assholeness.
Yeah, like they could be out in the middle of nowhere, okay? The only people on the mountain. And they can all be standing together. And one of them will yell. And then they'll get an answer yell back. Now, they're all there. And they'll be like, "Oh my God, that was a Sasquatch. That was a Bigfoot." And she'll say, "Oh no, it wasn't. That was a car horn." It's like, no, it wasn't a fucking car horn, lady. What's wrong with you?
Yeah, I've seen her do that a few times on that, and then she'll be like, another time, when they were talking, the one episode, they found the fur, and they had a primate, I forget, a cryptozoologist, I believe is what they're called.
Yeah, they're the study all these different creatures, like Chupacabra, and Big, and Nessie, and Champ, and all of them.
Yeah, they found, some hikers found the hair, and the guys analyzed the hair, and they were talking to the Finding Bigfoot people, and they're like, "Well, it doesn't match any known record of gorillas or apes. It doesn't match any known records of a human." And so when they got off the camera, you know how they do their separate little talking points? She goes, "Well, that doesn't really mean anything, because, you know, it could be a species of gorilla we don't know about yet, living, or a monkey or an ape." I'm like, really? So now there's species of monkeys and gorillas we don't know about? But not knowing that there's a Bigfoot out there is far-fetched?
I mean, we saw that in the Congo, brother. Remember, the silverback gorilla, which lives in the Congo, used to be a cryptic animal. It used to be a mythical, legendary creature that no scientist believed actually existed. Okay, if you said that a silverback gorilla was a real creature, they would laugh at you the same way they laugh at you when you say Bigfoot is real, or the Loch Ness Monster is real, or whatever, okay? It was the same thing until somebody found one, and they actually documented it. Here it is. Scientists actually were able to go look at them. And now we all accept that silverback gorillas exist, correct?
Oh, yeah.
Everybody knows it's true. But remember, at one time, before they found them in the Congo, that was a creature that everybody believed was just a legend.
Hey, I'm still with it's a legend. No.
But we saw the same thing with the giant squid.
Yes.
That was supposed to be a sea creature that did not exist until one of the deep diving subs got one on camera. And then shortly after that, within a couple months after that, they actually caught one in a fishing net.
And one washed up on shore after it died.
Yeah, exactly. And then all of a sudden, it's a real creature. And all these people that have been laughing all this time and saying we're stupid and crazy, you don't hear them say anything anymore. They just pretend like they knew it was a real creature all along. The coelacanth was another thing. That was a creature that was alive back in prehistoric times. It was a sea creature. And supposedly had went extinct like 10 million years ago until one washed up on the shore of Madagascar dead. And then all of a sudden, oh shit, these things aren't dead at all. They're still alive. Okay, I think that that's the exact same thing with Sasquatch. Okay, what I believe that Sasquatch actually is a Gigantopithecus. Gigantopithecus was a version of man from early times. People think that what we are now is all there ever was. Some people have heard of Neanderthals. The Neanderthal was another version of man who was a lot more muscular and solidly built to withstand the cold temperatures. We also had a variation of human back in ancient times, which were tiny, like hobbits. Okay, they were as small as hobbits. They were little bitty guys. We had those as well. We have fossil records of all these things. We also had Gigantopithecus, which was anywhere from 9 to 12 foot tall, hairy man. Okay, he looked like Chewbacca, basically. Okay, he was but he was huge, like 10 to 12 feet tall. And if you look at Sasquatch today, the video we have and the pictures we have and the eyewitness accounts that we have, they perfectly match up with the physiology of the Gigantopithecus. So what I believe is we're not looking at an unknown creature here. We are looking at a creature that people believe is extinct, which actually isn't. And being a distant cousin of man, another variation of human, this thing has intelligence. So that would tell me that that's the reason why we don't find them all the time. Okay, why they stay so hidden, so good at it, is because they're smart like we are. So they know enough to know that they don't want to be found by us, because what do? We kill everything. That's what we do. You know what I mean? If we want to keep something alive on this planet, we have to make it endangered and pass all these laws and then actually find the people that are killing the things and arrest them in order to save species. I mean, that's what assholes we are. We will kill things until they're extinct, you know? So, and that's something that's easy to see, especially if you're out in the woods and you see people out there, you know? Every time you see a person that deep in the bush, what happens? They're out there hunting to shoot something. So these creatures, that's what they see of mankind. So they see us as dangerous. People are out there to kill, you know? So they're going to avoid us at all costs. So I believe that's what the Sasquatch actually is a Gigantopithecus. And if you do a little research on the Gigantopithecus, you'll see that it lines up absolutely perfectly. And I think that the same holds true with Nessie, with the Loch Ness Monster and with the Lake Champlain Monster, Champ. I think both of those are plesiosaurs. And what a plesiosaur was a dinosaur creature that looked a little bit like a brontosaurus, but it was more of an aquatic creature. Brontosaurus went into water, but it lived on land. The plesiosaur was actually an aquatic dinosaur that had like huge flippers instead of feet and hands, and it had the long neck and the long tail. I think that's what Nessie and Champ actually are, and all lake monsters like that fit that description. I think that's what they are, is plesiosaurs that have somehow survived. You know, because like we learned from the coelacanth and from the giant squid, creatures can survive from prehistoric times to today. I mean, a lot of our sharks come from that time period.
And alligators.
Yeah, they come from that time period.
Mosquitoes.
Okay? Yeah, mosquitoes, exactly. Giant sea turtles.
Cockroaches.
I don't know if cockroaches were alive back then or not, but they might have been. But we have a lot of creatures today that are alive and well and thriving that existed in prehistoric times, including us. Okay? That's a whole other show that we'll do one day of whether man was around when dinosaurs were around. There is evidence that points to that. I'll give you a quick thing since I brought it up, so you don't think I'm crazy. We're doing an archaeological dig, I believe, in New Mexico. It might have been Arizona, but I think it was New Mexico. And they found a perfectly preserved set of dinosaur prints. And it was set in stone to where it had stepped into the stone. I guess the stone must have been molten or something at the time, or just cooling, where it was cool enough to step on it, but it was still hot enough to leave an imprint. But anyway, a dinosaur left a perfect set of prints in the stone. And what was interesting about it was underneath that dinosaur print was the top half, okay, of a human footprint with the toes and the top half of the foot. The heel was covered by the dinosaur print, but the other part was still sticking out. So what that tells you is that when that dinosaur came and put its foot down to leave that print in the rock, it did so on top of a pre-existing human footprint that was already there. Okay, this story made national news for a day and a half. And then all of a sudden it disappeared. And nobody talks about it anymore. But it was absolutely national news for a day and a half. It happened multiple years ago. And it was a big deal when they found it. And then all of a sudden it just went away. And you never hear a word about it anymore. And I'm not exactly sure why. I guess because it doesn't line up with the whole theory of evolution and all of that stuff. I mean, that's the way the scientific community is anymore, and it's sad. Is science is supposed to be looking at every bit of evidence and trying to draw a conclusion that makes sense from all of the available evidence. But what science is now is not that. What science does now is they come up with a theory, and they only accept evidence that supports that theory, and any other evidence that proves that theory wrong or that doesn't support that theory, they discard as fake. But this was on a university archaeological dig. This was a scientific dig. It was not some fake thing. You know what I mean? It wasn't some dude saying, hey, look what I found out here in the mountain. This was on an archaeological dig that they found this. And there's every trace of it gone. So there is evidence of that, but we'll do a different show on that someday. But that's what I think a lot of these cryptic animals are, is prehistoric animals that have survived. And you can have a small breeding population enough to sustain the species that can keep out of sight, you know. Another thing that skeptics always say that I hear constantly, that I'm going to debunk right now, is if there are Bigfoot, how come you never see bones? How come you never find dead bodies, dead Bigfoot or bones out in the woods or something like that? If they were there, you'd be able to find the remains. I hear that all the time. Now, this is coming from a man who lives in the mountains, okay? I have spent my entire life hunting, tracking, doing survival. I'm out there a lot, okay? I think we would all agree that bears exist, correct?
Ooh, I don't know. That's a tough one there.
I have never in my life found a dead bear in the woods. I have never found the skeletal remains of a dead bear in the woods. Never seen it. We all know that deer exist. I have never found a dead deer in the woods unless I shot it. You know what I mean? Or somebody else shot it. I've never just wandered upon a dead animal, dead deer in the woods, or bones of a deer. Now, you will find antlers sometimes because they shed their antlers every year. So you'll find them laying around, and they last quite a while before they go away. But almost all animals, you're not going to find the bones or the remains there very long in the woods, because it's a wet environment with a lot of scavengers and a lot of insects. So what happens is a body gets broken down fairly quickly in the woods to where there's not much left. Look at the case of Casey Anthony, okay, and her daughter Kaylee. Now, she allegedly killed her daughter. I mean, everybody remembers that court case. It was huge national news. The kid was wrapped and put in trash bags and thrown off the side of the road into the woods, okay? It was on the edge of the woods is where the body was thrown. A couple months later, they found that body. Now, keep in mind, this body was wrapped in duct tape and in 2 separate trash bags. Okay, sealed bags. And a couple months later, they found the remains. And all they found were scraps. A couple little scraps of the clothing she was wearing, and pieces of bone and skull. Not whole bones and skulls, just pieces of them strewn about. Okay, that's how quick all trace of something can disappear. Now, if you have an animal that dies in the woods, within a week, that animal is unrecognizable. Okay, all the meat and skin is gone because you have scavengers, you have birds, you have insects. They clean that off very quickly. And the bones only last a month or 2 before they're gone because they're going to be gnawed on, chewed on, eaten by different things. Okay, they're going to be played upon by the water and the elements. The sun's going to be beaten down on them. The rain's going to be pouring down on them. It does not take long for a body to completely disappear when it's in the woods. That's why most times when they find things, unless the body is buried, then usually all they find is a small fragment of a bone. And then they have to try to figure out who it is from that. Okay, so that's why you never find dead Sasquatch just laying in the woods. Or dead deer, or dead bear, or dead anything just laying in the woods, because it doesn't last very long until that body is gone.
Yeah. I've seen plenty of times. But I don't even think a body would last a week. You've got to remember, you got the scavenger beetles, the ants. Those things are everywhere, and I've seen them tear apart bodies in no time.
Yeah, they don't last very long at all. And, especially when you're talking a remote area, okay? If you're someplace where you're going to see a Sasquatch, most times you're pretty well up in the mountains because they don't live in town. You know what I mean? So you're going to be off the beaten path, away from people, to where there's not going to be very many interruptions for the scavengers. You know, it takes a little while for scavengers to take apart an animal that is hit by a car and is laying on the road or beside the road because there's cars zipping by and scaring them off every couple minutes. Okay, but out in the middle of the woods somewhere where there's nobody at, there's nothing to scare them away. They can sit there and just eat. You know what I mean? And it goes pretty quickly. It really does. And the last piece of evidence that I have is that really convinces me that these things are real and not a fake is my own experience. I'll tell my Bigfoot story for this show. I used to be a smoker, and I did not want my home to smell of cigarette smoke. I did not want my walls to be yellow, so I would go outside to smoke. So I went out several times every night to smoke and during the day as well. But one particular night, I went outside to smoke a cigarette, and I was standing out on the sidewalk that leads off my front porch. And keep in mind, I live out in the mountains, okay? I'm not in town where there's a bunch of people. I live out in the country, away from everything. So I'm standing out and I'm smoking a cigarette. And about 100 yards away from me is where my big barn is. I have a big stick barn. It's huge. It's like a 5 or 6 bay. It's gigantic. Same barn I blew a hole in with my cannon, actually, for the people that know that story from other shows. But that barn, right beside that barn, there's a tree. And standing beside that tree was something. It was dark, and I was looking up there trying to figure out what this shape was. It was massive. And I thought, it's probably a bear, okay? Because it's not unusual for me to see bear and mountain lion out here where I live, and fox. Sometimes you'll see a coyote every once in a while, but usually it's bear is what I see. Bear and deer. I have seen a couple mountain lions in my fields before. That's a real unsettling thing to have out close to you. But usually it's a bear. So I look up there, and that's what it looks like to me. Is it looks like there's a bear that's standing on its hind legs up beside the tree. I don't know if it's trying to get something up in the limbs of the tree or what's going on, but it's about anywhere from 10 to 12 feet tall. It's huge. It's very wide. That's what made me think it was a bear. It's like probably twice as wide as your normal person was. And just massively built. And it's standing on two legs beside the tree by my barn. So I think this is a bear. So my thought is, I need to get this bear away from my house because I have family and I don't want my wife to be coming home and have, the bear come up to her in the dark and something happen. You know what I mean? So I need to get rid of this bear. Now, I had went out to smoke a cigarette, and all I did was throw my pants on and my boots. I didn't even have a shirt on at the time. I didn't have my pistol with me, which almost never happens. I'm always packing. But this particular time, it was like, 1 o'clock, something like that in the morning. It was late. So it was one of those deals where I just wanted to get a cigarette real quick before I went to bed, so I didn't get fully dressed and all that. I just put on what I needed to put on. So I can't shoot this thing. So I figure what I'll do is I will bum rush the bear, waving my arms like a maniac and screaming and hollering, right? Now that sounds insane, but I'm somebody who spends a lot of time out here in the mountain. So I know that you can scare a bear away. Okay, people think bear are these ferocious creatures that just want to rip your head off, and that's not the truth. Most times, bear will run away from you. The only time you have to worry about a bear, unless it's a grizzly. Now, a grizzly, all rules are off because they eat us. Okay, they are man-eaters. We are on their menu. So this does not apply to them. But most other bears, whether it's a black bear or a brown bear, most times, if you're face-to-face with a bear, and I have been face-to-face, literally spitting distance, 3 times while I was out in the woods to a bear. The majority of times, they are not going to hurt you unless they have their cubs with you or with them, or unless you're threatening the bear in some manner. You're attacking the bear. Then they might, if they have nowhere else to go, they can't back away, they might attack you. Every once in a while, you just have an asshole bear that does what it wants anyway, but the majority of the time, you don't have a whole lot to fear from them. So I didn't see any cubs anywhere. So I thought, I'm going to bum rush this bear, and I'm going to make a lot of noise, and I'm going to make myself look very big. I'm very big anyway. I'm a big guy. I'm 6'4", 300 pounds. I'm not tiny. And when I put my wingspan all the way out, it's massive. I'm a big fella. So that's what I do. I take off running towards this bear that's up by my barn, waving my hands like a maniac, screaming, "Ah!" I'm going to scare this bear away. And sure enough, it turns and takes off running. Now, the thing that surprised me was when this thing turned and took off running, it did not drop down to all fours and take off running like it was supposed to. Because I've seen a lot of bears run away, and they always drop down to all fours and run away. They do not run on 2 legs like a man. But that's what this thing did, was run on 2 legs. And something in my head just told me, catch this thing. You've got to get to where this thing is. You've got to see it up close. Now, everything inside you would tell you, if you're dealing with something like that, don't follow it. Get the hell away from there. That's what your rational mind would tell you. But at this point in time, you got to remember, I'm running towards the barn. This is taking place in a split second when this thing turns to run. So I don't have time to really process it in my brain and really think it through. I just reacted. So my instinct was, run and catch this thing. You got to see what the hell this is, because this thing just took off running like a man. Okay? Now, in my mind, I wasn't thinking Bigfoot at this moment. I was thinking, oh my God, there's some kind of huge giant guy up by my barn. You know what I mean? This is a person, and I got to kick its ass. I got to find out what this thing is doing on my property, because like I said, it's not like I live in town where people pass through. Okay? If you're on my property, then you've had to go quite a distance to get to me. Because like I said, I live up in the mountain. So it's not like you're a neighbor. I can't even see my neighbors' houses. Okay, so I don't know who the hell this person is. So my thought is, catch this thing, find out what the hell is going on. Somebody's on your property. So I'm hauling ass, man. And I'm in fight mode now. I'm not in scare the bear away mode anymore. I'm in murder somebody with my bare hands mode, okay? So I am hauling ass up towards this barn. Right beside my barn, as you go around the corner of the barn, there's a fence there with a gate. That is there because in that back field, which is about 200 yards, I would say, from the gate to the other fence on the other side that disappears into the woods of the mountain. It's about 200 yards, somewhere around there. So right around the corner of the barn is where the gate is. Okay, I reach that gate, and I see this thing that had been standing beside my barn, jumping over the fence on the other end of the field. Now, in the time it took me to run not quite 100 yards up to my barn, this thing covered the 200-yard distance of the field, plus another, 10 or 15 yards to the gate from the barn, and was jumping across the other side of the fence. Okay? Like I said, it was nighttime, so it was dark. Now, it was I don't know if it was a full moon or a new moon or whatever they call it, but there was a bright moon out that night, so I could see. But I couldn't see as well as I wanted to see when it was daylight. But whatever this thing was, I saw it running as it reached the end of the fence line on the other end of the field, and leaping over it like a runner leaps over a hurdle, just bounding over this fence and disappearing into the woods. Whatever it was never came back. I've never seen it since. But I know that this thing was huge because I remembered where it was standing next to the tree, and I remembered that its head was just underneath the bottom limb of the tree. I mean, just barely underneath of it. And when I went out the next day and I actually took a tape measure and I measured, to that limb was 12 and a half feet from the ground to that limb. And this thing's head was just underneath of there. So I know that the creature was anywhere from 11 to 12 feet, basically, or 12 and a half feet. Somewhere in that range, because that's the height of the bottom branch of this tree. I also know that this thing was gigantic. Okay, not only tall, but very wide, very powerfully built. It looked, like I said, I thought it was a big-ass bear when I first saw it. That's how big this thing was. And I've never seen a person that looks like that. Even if you have somebody like a Brock Lesnar or somebody like that, one of them big, huge built dudes, they're not that big. You know what I mean? They're not bear big. They're just big. Even the Big Show isn't as big as this thing was. You know what I mean? And he's like, 7-something, 400-some pounds? This thing was huge. So that's the piece of evidence for me personally that makes me believe that these things are real, because of what I saw with my own two eyes. Now, if you're listening to this show, then chances are you've heard other shows I've done. So you know that I'm not somebody who believes in fairy tales, okay? I'm not somebody who just believes everything on face value. I research like crazy. I find all the facts possible. And when I do these different kinds of shows, I like to present all these facts to everybody and let you make up your own mind. So you know that I'm not somebody who is just going to be a crackpot or come up with some fanciful, crazy-ass thing. It's just not going to happen, okay? I'm going to give you the truth as I see it. And the best of my ability to research it, I'm going to give you the truth. And that is exactly what happened that night to me, personally. So that's what I saw. You guys are all going to make your own minds up on whether Bigfoot exists or not. But for me personally, I mean, there's little doubt in my mind that he does. You know, because not only have I seen what I believe to have been a Sasquatch, but also all the evidence that I've laid out in this show this hour. I mean, you got the Patterson-Gimlin film that has the muscle groups moving the way they're supposed to move. You have the outward locomotion of the knee joint when the thing is walking. You have the dermal ridges on the feet. You have the dermal ridges in the castings. Like Eric was talking about, you have the hair samples. And the one on finding Bigfoot was not the only time that has happened. There's been multiple hair samples collected in the woods and taken in for study, and only to find out that it matches no known DNA on record. So that tells you have an unknown animal here, you know? So there's tons of actual evidence that points towards Sasquatch being a real creature that exists. Then on top of all that, you also have to consider that there's been well over 100,000 eyewitness accounts. People that have said that they've seen Sasquatch and told their story, like I just did. Okay? So let's just cut the number at 100,000, because that'll make it easy to do math, okay? Let's say there's 100,000 eyewitness accounts. And let's say that 90% of those people, okay, and I'm being very generous here towards the skeptics and the critics. I'm giving them 90% of the people are full of shit. Okay? Just completely bonkers crazy or completely lying like through their teeth, full of shit. Okay? That still leaves 10,000 reputable eyewitness accounts. Okay, you can convict people of murder and give them the chair with one reliable eyewitness account. And that leaves over 10,000 when you figure the actual numbers. Some of which are police officers, some of which are soldiers, some of which are doctors and lawyers. And these are people that are not known to be crackpots, okay? These are people that are relied upon in society and believed to be truthful and honest. So that right there is another huge piece of evidence for me. I mean, when you have that many people that are describing an event with a lot of the exact same details, that tells you that either there's collusion and all these people are getting together somewhere and coming up with a story and sticking to it, or they're all talking about the same thing that they've seen, okay? Because there's a lot of the same details that are involved. So, I mean, 10,000 eyewitness accounts is nothing to laugh at, you know? So, I think that there's overwhelming evidence that points to Sasquatch being a real, live, breathing creature. Now, the question is, what do we do about that? First of all, they're very hard to find, so there's really not much you can do about it. I think they've proven that they're not dangerous, you know? I mean, you never hear of Sasquatches mauling people or killing people or any of that kind of shit. I mean, they try to stay away from us. So it's not like it's a dangerous animal that we have to worry about. I think that we need to protect it, you know? Just the same as we ought to protect every animal. You know, if it's an animal that you harvest for food, then that's a different story, you know. But even animals that we harvest for food, like wild turkeys and deer and bear and even fish, all of those animals are hunted, but they're hunted during a certain season, and there's bag limits. So there's regulation on the hunting to make sure that the species thrives. So I think we need the same thing with Sasquatch. And I'm not talking about a hunting season for Sasquatch. I mean, we need some kind of protection under the law for this creature. Because if all of the evidence is wrong and it doesn't exist, then what have you really lost by making a law saying you can't kill them? Nothing. There's a lot dumber laws. I mean, we did a whole show on Revolution Talk Radio about dumb laws, where we listed hundreds of just dumbass laws that are on the books in this country. So you're not losing anything by passing the law, but you might be saving a species, you know? And something like the Sasquatch, which I believe to be Gigantopithecus, that is a link to our past. That is a species that all we have is fossilized remains of. I mean, here would be the opportunity to actually study these creatures in their natural habitat, doing their normal things, you know what I mean? The same way we do silverback gorillas now, you know? And that's a creature that was thought to be just a myth. And now we know it exists. I talked about it earlier in the show. And there are scientists that actually go and study them now. And we've learned so much about them. And I think we have that same opportunity with Sasquatch, but we just have to be very careful, because somebody's going to kill one of these things. That's what's going to happen. And unfortunately, I think that's probably what has to happen in order for them to be recognized as a real creature. Somebody's going to have to shoot one, and there's going to have to be a body brought back for people to study and to actually say, oh my God, this is a real thing. And then once that happens, I think we need to move quickly to pass some kind of regulation or law that states that you can't kill these things. Because after all, if it is Gigantopithecus, it is a cousin to man. It is a human species. You know what I mean? So we need to protect it. And what are your thoughts, Eric?
I think, yeah, they have a state that actually has a law that you can't mess with the Bigfoot.
Yeah, I saw that. I can't remember which state it was. That's why I didn't bring it up.
Yeah, I can't remember for the life of me what state it was. I'll look it up this week, and then I'll let everybody know what state it is next week's show. But I do know there is one state that it is illegal to mess with, tease, do anything to bother the Bigfoot. I had it, but I lost it. I don't remember. But yeah, I mean, I'm under the impression that if they want to be found, they'll let themselves be found. So I say just leave them alone until they want that. I mean, I'm with you on that. I can't blame them, because we are assholes when it comes to creatures. We will literally damn near drive them extinct. When we've proven that time and time again. I think they should just pass a law worldwide that you can't mess with them. And I mean, well, in other countries, I know China, the Yeti, or wherever the Yeti is, the white one, the abominable snowman.
Yeah, that's up in the Himalayas.
Yeah, it's illegal to mess with them too. There are places in other countries that have that to where it's a law. You cannot, to shoot one, to mess with one is forbidden. So I think it would be a smart thing to do here.
Yeah, and I'm not a guy that is pro laws. You know, I don't like a lot of laws. I think we have way too many laws in the books now. I think we need to start getting rid of a lot of these laws. But in this case, I think there needs to be some kind of protection given to this creature, because if it stayed hidden for this long, it's obviously intelligent, and I mean, you just can't go around murdering intelligent creatures. That's just messed up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's the Bigfoot show. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Go on our Revolution Broadcast Network page on Facebook and leave us some comments and let us know what you thought of the show. And leave some ideas for topics for other shows that you want me to do on Writer's Block. I mean, I'm tackling a lot of these old histories and a lot of these old mysteries and stuff like that. And if there's something you guys really want to know about, or a show that you want done, like say you want to do Chupacabra, or you want to do Atlantis, or Bermuda Triangle, or whatever, just leave me some comments and let me know, and we'll work on getting a show together for you so you can hear it. Please tune into all of our other shows. Tomorrow night is going to be the Revolution Talk radio show, and we're going to have a special guest. We're going to have Ant-Man from We're Screwed is going to be on the show tomorrow night, so that'll be a hell of a lot of fun. You guys might know Ant-Man from We're Screwed, and he was also on the Common Ground show that we did with me and Ant-Man. And if you haven't heard that show, go to my YouTube channel, James Hershey Jr. on YouTube, and find that video, Common Ground, because that was a hell of a powerful show. I mean, it dealt with race, and we brought a white guy and a black guy together, and we had them, me and Ant-Man, and we kind of talked the whole race thing out, and we kind of found some common ground, and it was an amazing, amazing show. So check that out. Saturday will be We're Screwed. That's the show Ant-Man's from, and it has Old Boy and Tony Ninefingers. It's a hell of a funny show. It's a great show. Check that out. If you don't already listen to it, you won't be disappointed. Sunday will be Politically Incorrect with me and Eric. Monday night is the new night for Splatter Hour with Gage. That's a show all about The Walking Dead and zombie movies and zombie books and just all things undead. So that's a really fun show. And if you know Gage from the Revolution Talk radio show, he's quite the character. So you never know what the hell he's going to do. So you definitely want to tune in for that show on Monday. Tuesday night is Style Chic with with Nikki and Rhonda. And that's a show all about fashion and decorating and crafting and, chick stuff. I joke around with Eric and I say instead of being called Style Chic, it should be called Style Chick because it's like a chick show. But from what I hear, there's things on there that guys will enjoy too. I'm going to get with Nikki and we're going to have a camouflage episode one of these days. So we'll have an episode of Style Chic for all the rednecks out there. It'll be beautiful.
It's funny though. We were walking through the store the other day, and we saw camo pillowcases and camo sweaters. He goes, "Hey, we should get that for Hershey." And I'm like, "I'm pretty sure that redneck bastard has already got all that stuff in his house. He's camoed out. I wouldn't be surprised if his underwear is camo."
I actually have Real Tree pillowcases, so I do have Real Tree camo for my pillowcases and sheets.
Yeah, shit figures.
But Wednesday night is a weird night. I think this Wednesday we might have the next episode of Common Ground. It's going to be on illegal immigration, so that's going to be a really good show. We're going to have a special guest. It's an actual activist for Mexico, so it's going to be interesting. We're going to try to get that to you on Wednesday. We're not exactly sure because there was a situation last week when we were going to have the show where her water main broke and it was a big mess, so she couldn't do the show. So if all that stuff is straightened out, we're going to try to bring the next episode of Common Ground to you on Wednesday. Wednesday night is going to be a night where we try out new show ideas. If one of us has an idea for a new kind of show, then we're going to try it out on Wednesday night and see how it goes. If we are going to have a special event like the Common Ground show, we'll be bringing that to you every now and again. When we're going to do a special event like that or some other special event, like if we're going to do a fundraiser for the troops or something like that, those will take place on Wednesday night. That's going to be kind of our free night that we're able to experiment and play around a little bit and figure some things out. And then Thursday is Writer's Block again with me and Eric. And I have no idea what I'm going to do next week. I never do until probably 4 days before, 3 or 4 days before I decide what I'm going to do. Most of these topics I've already researched quite a bit in my own personal life because I'm the kind of guy that if I don't know something, it drives me absolutely crazy, and I've got to look it up. So I know a lot about a lot of different things, and especially when you're talking about history and all these conspiracy theories and different mysteries and stuff like that. I love this kind of stuff. So the majority of the stuff I bring you on these shows, I already know, but I do research quite a bit before each show, for 3 or 4 days before. So I will figure out what I'm going to do next week, and then we'll let you know on the Revolution Broadcast Network page.
Yeah, and you can also find the Revolution Broadcast on Instagram too, and Twitter. So look, and now Tumblr. So look for us all there too.
I never knew what the hell a tumbler was. I don't
know either. I just
a cup that you drank out of was called a tumbler, right?
I thought it was a weed that flies in the desert. Hell if I know. I just post on it, put pictures of it, of the show and what's coming up on it. So
it's amazing, all this technology. We're quickly becoming the old people that don't know what the hell is going on with technology. You realize that, right?
Yeah, I know.
It's sad.
It drives me. I still can't. I can't figure half of it out, so I just give up. And I'm like, forget it, dude. I don't even want to know.
That's the Bigfoot show. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you guys for listening. I love you all very, very much. Like I said, if there's any topics you want me to cover, or if you have any comments on the show, hit us up on the Revolution Broadcast Network page. You can join my fan group on Facebook, horror author James Hershey Jr. Look me up. I have a fan group on there. I have an author page on there because I write books for a living, for those that don't know. Or my personal Facebook, whatever. You can leave me a comment, send me a message. Same goes for all the hosts and all the different shows. You can look us up, and believe me, we will get back with you. So you can communicate with us and let us know, what you think of the shows, or, if you have an idea for a show that you'd like to see, just let us know. So thanks very, very much. I love you guys, and like Eric always says at the end of every one of these, stay positive and love your life.